Hello everyone and welcome back to your weekly PlayStation podcast, Talking the PS, where we round up all of the PlayStation and cloud gaming news for your listening or viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/Helix Cloud Games. You join myself, Chris, alongside my wonderful panel of hosts. Joining me this week, we have the return of the man of many pixels, Mr. Ritchie. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome indeed. And joining him alongside our chaotic neutral, Rob, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're here
not
to
as,
talk.
Not as formal as Richie, but...
Not as formal. We are here this week to talk about all of the PlayStation news, and we do have a great show lined up for you all, discussing a new Iron Man game in the works, potentially at a year, Tencent seeking to buy out more shares in Ubisoft, Spider-Man coming to Steam Deck, a couple of name changes, games coming out, and all the extra PlayStation goodness. But before we delve into all that, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of the amazing content we bring you here at Helix Cloud Games, just like our weekly live streams, our Let's Plays, our first looks, and much, much more with you, the wonderful community out there. Such a wonderful community, in fact, you can join us over on Discord if you want to chat along with all those like-minded gamers and keep in the loop with a couple more things that we're doing here at Helix Cloud Games. As I said, this week, plenty of PlayStation content. Richie, to start off with, you and me jumped into the wonderful world of Stray once again for a very unique challenge this past week. What did we do? Tell the folks.
Yeah, we went for the I Am Speed trophy, but instead of just one of us going for it, we both went for it simultaneously as a race.
As a race. Never been done before in the history of the internet that two people would square off and race. And if you want to check that out, it is available on the channel. I did it via cloud streaming, which I thought Richie was doing until we got about half an hour in and realised that he was cheating.
I told you before we started the stream and fairly early in the stream that I was using remote play. So I wasn't just native on my PlayStation. I was using remote play from my PC into my PS5. And the reason I was doing that is because there's one achievement I'm still to get. And I didn't want to get it on a different save file and absolutely hate myself for it.
Richie, you sound like an Olympic sprinter who's got caught doing steroids. And it's like trying to explain it away and...
Well, there's again, go check the video out, guys. It's less than, it's actually just over 2 hours long. The trophy is, of course, 2 hours. There's lots of laughs along the way to be had, but there's interesting points in the game where we both diverge our paths to see where time was made up or lost. Did it crash on me at all doing cloud gaming? You'll have to go check out. Do we compare it to the cloud gaming? You'll have to go check it out. But it's available on the channel now, just like my first look. Stray, again, doing wonderful things. Plenty more mods. I've seen people mod the cat into like a Sith Lord. This week, I know we had, I think last week I mentioned CJ from Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was turned into a cat to compete. This game is just the gift that keeps on giving as far as I'm concerned. And I'm loving it. Loving it so much so, I'm going for my second platinum trophy in it. I did the first one on PS5, and after me and Richie got the stream out the way, I thought, you know what, I'll jump back in and I'll do some more things. And I think we're at about 88% now, so... Win-win, 2 platinum trophies for me. What's that, Jeff? I can hear him out there clapping, round of applause. Thank you very much.
I have no platinum trophies in this game yet. There is one trophy I still need to get.
It's the zigzag one, isn't it? It's the Rickon Stark trophy that's causing so many people problems out there. Wonderful stuff. So go check that out. And Rob, what games have you been playing this week in your spare time, if you've had any?
So, after last week when we were talking about the Yakuza series... I decided to jump in. I didn't really know where to jump in because obviously there's so many titles. So I chose Yakuza 0. And Jesus Christ, I am sucked into that franchise now in a huge way. It's phenomenal, yeah.
What got it sucked into you? What was the biggest thing?
I think it's first of all, it's like the combat system, which... Bear in mind, this is a 2014, I think, remake. It reminds me of kind of really old school arcade combat, kind of modernised, but not too much to lose its kind of nice feel. So there's that. And there's also, Richie, you're probably kind of familiar with this when you're playing kind of Japanese-based games. There's always something about the mission structure and the dialogue where it's... I can't really describe it, but it's really kind of... all I can describe it as is comfy. It's very comfy. I don't know.
I always get the vibe that it's like a comedy.
I probably would know what you mean if I was playing it. It's like, oh yeah, I see what... When I play it, I'm going to start playing and go, that's what Rob meant.
Yeah, it's just, there's something about the aesthetic and the characters' kind of demeanours and things like that, which is just, despite the fact it's a gangster beat 'em up, is very kind of soothing in a way.
Yeah. Looking at from what I've seen of the trailers and stuff with all the Yakuza series, there's always something a bit wacky and zany about it. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think is part of the charm of those kind of like Japanese games where even though what they're doing is ultimately like serious, it involves murder, death, like loads of crazy things, yet everything's always like super hyped up energy. And I think it comes a lot from like with the world of anime and stuff. If you remember, like Dragon Ball Z and everything's like super crazy. Everything is like hyped up to the max. When they do the littlest things, like in Pokemon, all he does is he's throwing a ball to release a Pokemon, and yet the whole build up, the crank of the arm, the music and the spin just to throw a ball. It's all
the
like
whole
kind of
motion backgrounds behind Ash as he turns his hat.
It's like
I've just done a mission where I have to buy like a ring, just like a ring for like this girl I like, and it's so involved and like the motivations behind him and like it's just great. I love it.
That's wonderful.
Definitely check it out.
Was that one included in PlayStation Plus then, Zero? Was that already in the catalogue?
So I'm not actually 100% sure because I looked at a couple of the Yakuza titles on PlayStation Plus streaming. But I also signed up to Xbox on their kind of beta cloud platform. Yeah. It was like £1, like the special deal where it's like £1 for 3 months.
Oh, we've all done it. We've all done it. Yeah.
Ridiculous, right? And it functions a lot better on there. So I chose to play it there.
That's fair enough.
I won't keep Xbox once it runs out, but if I get better performance, then
Yakuza 0 is on PlayStation Plus Extra and PlayStation Plus Premium. Going by a Push Square article that we covered last week, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked myself if that is including the cloud versions or is it just the downloady versions.
Yeah. Again, this is the
Like
kind of
a Dragon was the monthly game.
Yeah, that was the freebie. But again, this is the kind of thing that we want or we hope that PlayStation are going to kind of iron out the creases of because it's so messy with what is out, what is coming, what tier you're on, what is streaming, what is downloadable. Do you get the PS4, the PS5 version? I've seen a few people this week with... It might be one of the Final Fantasy games that you don't get the upgrade to the PS5 version, even though it's supposed to be included. It's like there's just loads of little caveats all over the place, and it just needs tidying up a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to give them a pass for the next 6 months while they're iron out the issues, and we'll see where we lay.
I think this is one I'd like to see journalists improve a little bit on when they've got like the list of games and it's got the different tiers. Just notify it in some way whether it's cloud or not. Available on cloud. Just that one extra little bit on the end.
It's like if you go on the PlayStation blogs and go right to the end, there is about 5. There's like asterisk 1, 2 asterisks, 3, 4, 5, and they're all like slightly different variations based on region.
I don't have time to figure this out.
You need like a matrix grid of information to get to it. But no, that's great. That's good that you're enjoying the Yakuza series. You can be our man on the inside then if as you work your way through them because I haven't claimed this. Yeah, this month's game's alive now. I haven't claimed mine yet. But again, I've been working through Stray and I'm about to go on holiday, so I'm going to probably just do nothing. I say I'm going on holiday, I'm not intending to play games. I haven't told the wife, but I have bought the BioShock trilogy on the Nintendo Switch because it was £7.99. So depending on what we do, I saw it and I was like, £8 for the full BioShock remastered trilogy. And I was like, it's been a while since I dove into Rapture, so...
I wonder how they'll play on Switch. That'd be interesting.
I'm very keen. It's not the cloud version, but 20 gig file size for 3 games.
Oh, how many Switches do you need to install that?
I don't know. It depends on your memory card. But either way, I digress. And just got a message from my wife. Your wife can hear you. Your wife can hear you.
It's like...
Yeah. Well, he's in trouble, guys.
Get some of this. Get some of this. And
get some soundproof padding behind me. Either way, folks, it's on the horizon. Just like the rest of this episode is. So that's what we've been playing at the moment. A bit of Stray, a bit of everything. Actually, Richie, before we move on, what did we settle on Ghost of Tsushima, or did we go back to God of War, or have we give up on both of them and we're doing something completely different now?
We have settled on Ghost of Tsushima. I am still working on the trophy for Stray. I do want that platinum because I'm 1 trophy away from it. So it's, you know yourself how annoying it is when you're 1 trophy away from it.
Yeah, it's not much of a grind either, that one outstanding one. It's just a bit of time commitment.
It's one of them. I keep getting frustrated and I keep jumping into it I'll play I'll have a couple of runs, a fail, and go, right, I'm bouncing out, I'm getting annoyed now. But then it's Ghost of Tsushima at the moment.
Sweet. Did you
it's probably Yakuza next, actually.
Did you ever?
Because I was on the fence, but Rob sold me.
Did you ever get round to the Iki Island expansion for Ghost of Tsushima? Okay. Are you intending to include that in this run?
Probably, actually.
Good. Definitely recommend it. It's a whole separate area, but it's got some new enemy types, some different changes to your skill tree. It tells a nice little compounded story right at the end. I think it's just off the east coast of the main campaign island, so definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I've almost finished the first third as a map.
Brilliant stuff. Lovely. Right then, gentlemen, let's get into the bulk of the show, which is the news, of course, sponsored by our Helix Heroes, those wonderful 50-plus people out there who support the channel that little bit extra, which allows us to bring amazing content like this, and they get it early. They get it a few days early when it goes live, if we record it early, and they get our CloudQuest Show up to 6 days early as well, plus other perks, benefits, badges, stickers, and all the sorts. So we thank you all for your patronage, and you guys sponsor the news this week, but we can't get into the news until Richie introduces us to the
properly prepared PlayStation perusing points, aka the news.
The news. The news. I was going to say this week is sponsored. I'm getting really thirsty. I've seen one of these mega cans of Iron Brew. You've seen these ones kicking about where they're like twice the size of a normal can. So for the audio listeners out there, for American listeners out there as well, Iron Brew made with girders. Sorry about that. Richie's on a
ASMR.
beer. You on a beer, Rob? What's our typical choice?
No, I'm on water in like a douchey metal bottle.
What does it say on the bottle?
What? Like this?
I'm not sure. I stole this from work.
Borrowed it from work.
It says
Hold it more central.
Wait,
central. Up.
Shogun.
There we go. Oh, yeah. So like Richie's Ghost of Tsushima, the Shogun. I don't know what that means. Iron Brew, very sugary, made with girders. Do you guys like Iron Brew?
Steve Carell recommended.
He did on the Snack Wars thing.
I mean, it's irrelevant what we think of it. Steve Carell likes it, so
that's true. Very sugary drink.
That's all you need to know.
Do you like it, Richie?
I do. I do.
It's bad for you though. It's full of sugar.
Oh yeah. I try to stay away from it because it's too much sugar.
It's like the original energy drink, isn't it? Before Red Bull was a thing or anything. Like the amount of sugar content in the original recipe for this must have kept you awake for a whole week. But like I said, we've got plenty of news to talk about, so let's dive into it. Starting with story number 1. Last week we covered EA working on a supposed Black Panther single-player game. We give our theories, we give some great ideas about skill trees, storylines, campaigns, location settings, all that kind of wonderful stuff. And this week, from the very same reporter, Jeff Grubb, over on his weekly gaming podcast, apparently EA are also working on an Iron Man video game. So fresh off of the Black Panther news, we've got another Marvel superhero supposedly in the works. He leaked it as part of it, basically referring to the Black Panther game that he spoke about on last week's show. He said that they're working on another single-player game, and that was also collaborated with Tom Henderson, another reporter out there, who said he'd heard a few rumours that it might be Iron Man, but he hadn't had anything concrete to report on yet, why it stayed silent until now. So essentially getting two industry veteran journalists, both kind of like agreeing their stories kind of line up in a weird way. And here we are. Iron Man, gentlemen, of course. Tony Stark, made famous by Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal in the MCU. We have had an Iron Man game on PlayStation. We should say the Iron Man VR game that came out, I want to say probably 3 years ago now, is fantastic as a VR game because you do genuinely feel like Iron Man with the heads-up display, flying around, Jarvis in your ear, telling you all the things. Little bit clunky, as all VR games sometimes are. It takes some getting used to. But the opening tutorial, you're in a plane and I think it's attacked and Pepper gets sucked out the plane. You've got to go out after her and shoot debris while you fly after her, and it is really, really fun. However, a third-person Iron Man single-player action-adventure game. Richie, I'll go to you first. You had some great ideas last week on Black Panther. What the hell would you do with an Iron Man game?
Well, one of my ideas was that Black Panther is a better idea than doing like an Iron Man game. So,
okay.
Oops. I did use Iron Man as an example of a game where the motion would be harder to get to play really well because you're kind of operating in 3 dimensions, which makes it a lot harder to control. But I don't know, to be honest. Well, to be honest, I wouldn't go stealth with Iron Man. It kind of needs to be very action-focused. But I also want to point out, EA already attempted to make an Iron Man game with Anthem and failed.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the flight mechanics in Anthem were good. Like the takeoff from the ground, the flying around.
The problem is they couldn't decide whether they wanted them or not.
That's very true. So what about, I mean, surely skill tree writes itself with a literal like armor made of like technology. You start off with the most basic suit, and then by the end of the game, you're on Mark 52 or something like that. That's a fantastic starting point. What about you?
You could have things like Hulkbuster and stuff as part of your skill tree and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the Hulkbuster would have to be like a special you call in. Almost like in the Dinosaurs games where you go into like Musou mode and all the armor comes in and you're just like invulnerable, invincible for like 10 minutes or something.
Like, a lot of the time you explore the world as Tony Stark, but you can call in different suits as you unlock them. So that's how you kind of change. You can change up your playstyle on the fly by jumping in and out of suits. You know, like is it Iron Man 3 when it was Extremis, like Tony's jumping between suits.
Mm-hmm. As long as the suits don't become as feeble as they did in Iron Man 3. Like, they're literally... The first two movies, he's practically, like, invincible in this suit of armour. And in 3, you practically sneeze at the suits and they just crumble into nothingness. It's like, okay.
I envision this, like, you know, in Ghost of Tsushima, where you can change your stance to take on different types of enemies. A similar idea to that.
Okay. I could buy into that. Of course, plenty of customization as well. Like, he's got how many variations of like colour suit and stuff. So in terms of monetizing this bad boy, as we know EA like to do, that's practically right in itself as well. You get your different outfits for different seasons and colour codes. Rob, anything where you come from a story point of view, maybe? What?
Not so much the story, but I think one thing that would appeal to me a lot would be, I don't know how you'd work this. It might be like a mission format before like you kind of progress or something, but almost like an option to customize your loadout depending on, like, say you're like, I'd like it to be part of like the SHIELD kind of organization where it's like, okay, this is happening, Tony, go and fix this, and then like Tony gets to choose his loadout, and like you can like, I don't know. The one thing that always like stands out for me is in the first Avengers, where there's like all those kind of the first like Shatari come down from the portal, and he has that kind of like rocket launcher thing on his,
I think his shoulders
side. Yeah, so he has like that for like, if you know you're going up against lots of kind of weak mobs, you can like put that on. If you know you're going up against like a Thanos level person, you can like do your chest beam or something like that. So I'd like that amount of customization. And I think the one thing it's like the flight mechanics of some Iron Man iterations in the past have been a bit weird. Like the difference between kind of going at full speed flying around and then like switching to like basically becoming like a weapons platform.
Yeah.
Like the balance between that I think needs to be kind of the main focal point, because one of the things I didn't like about, I can't remember what platform I was playing on now, but it almost felt like a Transformer where like Iron Man just transforms into like an Ace Combat type of game and you're just flying around like a plane. So I don't know how they do it, but just make it a bit more kind of organic-y as a man as opposed to a plane or a static platform that hovers around. I think that's
you need to be able to move properly in 3D in like all dimensions while you're still controlling Iron Man and fighting at the same time. You don't want to just like, okay, I'm locked onto this target now, so now I'm just hovering and moving like kind of respective to that guy.
Yeah. I think there's like parallels to with like the Spider-Man games as well, where they did a really, really good job of kind of making you feel the speed at which he was swinging through the city. And the trouble is with like, especially with like flying games, like I'm a big Ace Combat fan, but when there's no reference point to kind of fly next or around to, you don't feel like you're moving very quick or there's much dynamic like pace to it. So
yeah, I know what you're saying. You usually add those like little white flakes, like little flicks on the wings to make it feel like air's passing you by. But yeah, I guess with Iron Man, again, if he's in and around the city of like New York or the base around Malibu or something, you've got quite a few points of reference. But whether this goes open world style or they trying to keep it quite linear, they're obviously going to have big action set pieces where you do get the freedom to fly around, because if it was all just single player but you boots on the ground, you're not really utilising the suit to its best abilities. Like, one of the coolest things about Iron Man is he can fly, and yet he's got no superpowers whatsoever. So that definitely needs to play a part in it. And yeah, I love the concept of the weapon loadouts. Like, if you go into like his little underground bunker and Jarvis says, "Oh, the mission like rollout from Shield for this task is these are the villains we're going to come across. What kind of loadout do you want?" And if you go into that level with the wrong loadout, you're going to die, you're going to fail or something, you're going to have to backtrack, almost like a Dark Souls-esque, and reconfigure how you approach it. Because, the little rockets, he's got in Iron Man 2, he's got that one laser beam, which shoots in a big circle and takes out all the hammer drones, but he's got one use of it, and then it's burnt out, done. So, loads of upgrades.
You've got to balance like the power you have based on the suit you're using. Some suits are probably drain power quicker based on the weaponry, some a bit more efficient. But I'd also like to almost have it so if you're doing it like almost like it's a very linear mission structure, almost like a good version of Avengers. If like when you go back and go, say if your suit just took a lot of damage, you can't use that next time. It has to be you have to wait to get it repaired.
Yeah.
Or you spend some sort of in-world currency to repair. Not like a monetization currency, but just like an in-world thing. Just kind of like one of them things to kind of force you to use the different suits.
Yeah, there's nothing worse in games.
You have to think about, okay, I'm going to do this mission.
Yeah.
What suit do I need? What suit am I going to have a backup that I can just Veronica in?
Yeah. No, that would be really cool. I think, again, there's many games we've probably all played as gamers where you kind of settle on your favourite loadout, and then by the time you're near the end game, you don't even touch some of the newer gadgets or gizmos they give you because you're just so comfortable with your own loadout and the specials that you've got. Whereas I think that's a great idea, Richie, that it becomes kind of damaged in a way that it will take time to repair. So you need to just hang fire, use a different suit while that one's in the shop, and it will force you to almost try out different tactics and suits.
Yeah, it's encouraging a playstyle where changing your suit isn't like an inconvenience. It is what is expected of you.
Yeah, that could be fantastic. So in terms of story, guys, what villains are we going with? Are we following MCU? Do we get to see some Mandarin, not Mandarin, Trevor Slattery action? Or do we stick with Aldrich Killian kind of deal? Or are we talking Avengers levels of threat?
Something they haven't done before. Something the MCU hasn't done as well, I'd go. If it's not going to be Robert Downey Jr., which I doubt it is, you want to separate from the MCU as much as you possibly can. Because I think if you go too close, if you try to just make Robert Downey Jr. but without using him, that's when I think you start getting the uncanny valley. Like, feels a bit fake, but if you just kind of go, no, we're just going to do our own thing completely, it's easy. I think it's an easier sell. I think using a villain that the MCU hasn't used out of Iron Man's back catalogue is the smarter route to that.
I
think that was the issue with Avengers game, wasn't it? Like, they looked a bit too close to the MCU counterparts, and like people criticised it.
Yeah. Well, again,
not knowing
it's hard,
to be
isn't it?
Distinct.
You've had a decade of these famous people on everything, new movies, TV, and then to see kind of their counterparts is just it is very uncanny valley. I'm personally, I wouldn't mind them actually. It's been so long since we had Iron Man 1 and 2, and I actually don't think going back to the well on some of those villains like Ironmonger and what was it was the guy with the whips, Whiplash, was it? Ivan Vanko?
You could do 10 10 rings, because the 10 rings have been done very differently in the MCU.
Very true. Full organisations, but there's lots of stuff to pull on, and obviously with Iron Man kind of being out of the picture, we're going to get Ironheart, I think, with Disney Plus next year, I think it is. But as far as the stories are done, they're actually probably in a really good safe zone now where there isn't a big focus on Iron Man, so I'm sure he will come back in some regard with all the multiverse stuff they're doing in the MCU. But in terms of video games, you've got quite a fresh slate. The next question, I guess, that follows on from this naturally, guys, is that if we got a Black Panther game in the works and an Iron Man, we've got Spider-Man, successful as hell, from Insomniac, we've got Wolverine in the works. Are we about to see some kind of like connected universe in the video game world, or is that asking too much?
I think it's asking too much. If it was all Sony exclusive stuff, if we weren't talking about an EA Iron Man and EA Black Panther, and we're talking about a Naughty Dog Iron Man or some along that lines, I think it could happen. But it'd be weird to have like an EA going to put this on all platforms, but then have that linked into a Sony only property in like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So
I will say one thing I don't want them to do, as much as I love Nolan North, don't cast him as Tony Stark. Like, get someone new, get someone unknown, give him a fresh voice, but just... Or Troy Baker. I don't need to see my main characters in every single game voiced by the same two individuals. As awesome as they are, and all the great voice acting they've done for the games industry, I just need a new take on something.
I think there's something to be said for it not being a connected universe as well, because in order to do a connected universe properly, you need someone like a Kevin Feige in charge, and you need to plan everything out well in advance, where if you just go, you know what, we're going to make an Iron Man game, we might make sequels to that, but it's standalone, separate to everything else, you have a lot more freedom, and I'd rather the devs have that.
Yeah, completely agree. And video games are made very differently, of course, as well. Like the
power balancing.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yeah. And the sheer cycles of kind of the way these games are made, it's not like the MCU where they can get 3 movies out a year. Like, you're talking, if this Iron Man game did well, you probably look another 4 to 5 years maybe for the sequel. So then you're already potentially the character might be so out of popularity by another half a decade's time. Then is it worth investing the millions to get up to there? But interesting stuff, none the same. IP's obviously been shared out by Disney now. Good to know that they're still going back to EA. It's interesting, off the back of this leak and the Black Panther leak, the EA's CEO, Andrew Wilson, was actually stated discussing single-player games this week as part of one of the company's shareholder meetings. And he described single-player games as really, really important. Although the chief financial officer did follow up that says games as a service make up for 70% of EA's total business. So it depends whether the money matters as much.
Yeah.
But I guess
it's a bit of a strange kind of comment there, because it's almost like we know everyone likes single player games, like, please like us, but just also keep buying the game as a service thing, please.
I think there's room for both, like, to be honest. Like, 70% of the revenue might come from multiplayer, like persistent world experiences, microtransactions, all that stuff. But if 30% of the revenue is coming from single player games in an era where EA haven't been known to make that many single player games, that's still a significant chunk of their money that they don't want to lose.
Oh, definitely not. You're not talking like cheap chump change or anything. It's still going to be lots of money.
And if you bring out more single player games, that number is going to go up.
Yeah. The best way I look at it, even though it might not be the bulk of their revenue stream, is even at 30%, I think it's worth more value in brand than it is in actual monetary value. I think making single-player games, it appeases video gamers and the industry as a whole when it comes to, like, let's face it, Game of the Year awards do not go to games as a service games. They might win, like, best live service, best season pass content, but they're not. Let's face it, the end of this year is going to be God of War, Elden Ring, what else have we had, Stray, and whatever, all single player games that get the kind of plaudits and the awards. I think it does really, really good for EA to put out Jedi Survivor, an Iron Man game, a Black Panther game, whatever the little indie titles are working on, It Takes Two, all those type of games. I think they do much, much better value for the company's look to the public, the optics of their business, rather than just a money-hungry, greedy, will drain you through microtransactions kind of business, which they've had that look for a good long time now.
And I think it's also understanding that these gamers like me, for example, who has very little interest in live service games.
Yeah.
So if you only put out live service games, you don't get any of my money.
There's also
you could have some of my money by putting out some single player experiences.
Yeah, there's a very inconvenient truth as well, where the resources it takes to bring out a new multiplayer game as a service type of iteration every year is a lot less than it takes to develop an entirely new property. So, like, as much as gamers like kind of rag on like kind of microtransactions and things like that, they do disproportionately fund the development of single player games, which no one likes to say, but is the reality.
I think while we're talking about it, you have to understand that the reason developers keep putting microtransactions in games is because people keep buying stuff in game through microtransactions. If no one used them, they wouldn't bother.
Yeah. And again, it's as cost scope. We know that inflation and business practice and everything like that microtransactions help the longevity of a game. So if you can sell 8 million units and make X amount of profit, but then through season pass, DLC content, cosmetics, you can accrue another 20, 30 million profit off the back of that, then it's going to help fund your next game without having to look at investment from outside sources, which actually some of the stories later in the news this week are very much focused on that. So good to see. Obviously, we're probably still, if it's still a rumour at this stage, we are, just like the Black Panther story, a good few years out. So we'll cover this story, no doubt, as time moves on. But moving on to the next story of the week, as I mentioned there about outside investment. We know Ubisoft, aside from EA, have been going through some troubled waters at times. We're not too sure what their future slate of video games look like until we see their Ubisoft Forward, just over about a month away. However, rumours are circulating that Tencent are seeking to become the biggest single largest Ubisoft shareholder, according to a new report from Reuters. They cite a number of sources close to the company with knowledge of ongoing discussions. Tencent do already own around 5% of Ubisoft and a chunk of other game companies too. I think Richie Weave listed through it on the Sounds of Stadia podcast a few weeks ago. And I think they have shares in Epic, Riot Games, and a bunch of other like large, well-known companies. And no surprise then, they want to get in on the Ubisoft game. And at the moment, it is currently 80% are publicly owned, 15% are owned by the Guillemot family. Obviously, CEO Yves Guillemot, the family's had them since the inception, created Ubisoft. And then 10% own 5% remaining shares, I should say. Richie, we discussed Tencent in one of our CloudQuest episodes recently and their move into cloud gaming alongside Amazon, Google and Microsoft and every other big tech company who's got one eye on the future of video games. Where does this sit with you, Tencent looking to essentially take over most of Ubisoft?
I don't really know, because Tencent are kind of a bit nebulous because they have their fingers in a lot of pies but rarely own the whole thing. And I mean, I think if they're wanted to be the single largest shareholder, that 80% that are publicly traded, that it's not that 8% they're going for. It'll be the 15% by the Guillemots, which means that they'll only own at most probably about a fifth of the business. So it's not like they'll have just completely freedom to do whatever they like with it. So it's really hard to say. This could just be an investment portfolio. They might just go, you know what, we're going to buy 10% of the shares off you, but we're going to keep you guys on to run the company, and then we're just going to take out dividends every year.
Yeah, well, we've discussed Ubisoft at length. A few years back in 2016, they did fight off a hostile takeover from Vivendi, who essentially just kept snapping up more and more shares in a bid to force out the public shareholders and then the Guillemot family as well. And back in May, he did actually come out and say that they are open to acquisition offers, though everything needed to remain independent. So, and I quote, "We have the talent, the industrial and the financial scale and the large portfolio of powerful IPs to create massive value in the coming years. It has provided us with the plan to build strategic partnerships with the biggest players in entertainment and technology." So, is this just a cash investment, do we think, Rob? Or is this something Tencent just getting their tendrils out into more and more parts of the Western games industry? Because again, Tencent, for those who don't know, massive Chinese company, which in turn means that the Chinese government are involved and have stakes in Tencent too.
I think the strange thing for me is the detail where they're willing to pay kind of over the market rate for the share price, which, let's be honest, there's been a couple of missteps with Ubisoft, kind of with a couple
just
of titles.
Yeah,
like, so I'd say at the moment, in terms of like share price and things, and I don't kind of keep track of their share price religiously, but in terms of like hits and momentum, they're in like a bit of a weak position, I'd say. So the kind of desire to pay above the odds for the shares is a bit of a strange one.
You're right and wrong in some ways, because in terms of the stock with gamers, I think the stock's quite low at the moment. But in terms of profitability, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is selling. So if you're looking at this purely from a commercial perspective, not the optics perspective, Tencent might be going, you know what, if we go over the share price here, we can get this deal done quick. And this is a cash cow for us.
But I'd even argue that makes them a bit weaker in terms of like how good Valhalla's doing, because they're not diversified in kind of successful titles, really. A couple of their franchises now are, let's be honest, on their ass.
Yeah. We know Valhalla's on the way out as well. Like, they can't squeeze that stone for that much more juice, to be fair. Like, outside of this year's DLC drop, it's going to be the end of that story. So, as good as it is, we still don't know what the future is.
I think it depends on your perspective. If you were just a financial investor, you don't care about video games, you just see Ubisoft as this is a good investment in your portfolio, you probably don't care that much how diverse a portfolio is, as long as that profitability keeps going up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to make an absurd prediction for the next 2 years. And I'm going to say that Tencent's going to take like a majority. And I think they're going to start sniffing around Warner Brothers as well. Because if you
I think that's absurd at all.
But I think give it 2 years, I think they'll definitely try and acquire Warner Brothers as well, because they've got the patent for the Nemesis system until I think 2035. So if you imagine kind of being able to inject the likes of Assassin's Creed and those types of open world games, with the Nemesis system, I don't know how it would work with like a minority ownership of.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting things to dive into that, and I think you're right. There's something paying up way above the company's current share valuation, which in turn, this actual news story has actually pushed Ubisoft's share percentage up. No surprise there. Companies sniffing around to buy, everyone suddenly dives on the stock market. But in terms of Tencent and their ownership and wanting little segments of everything, I think Ubisoft obviously are looking at this as like a big cash injection, but paying over the odds, similar to kind of how Microsoft paid way over the odds for Activision Blizzard in terms of like the billions, when we've seen, even just recently, it's actually the next story up, but Square Enix sold Tomb Raider, Crystal Dynamics, Adios Montreal for 300 million to Embracer Group, just 300 million. And then Microsoft paid 67 billion for Activision Blizzard and Call of Duty, and it's like, the scale of how much stuff's worth in the games industry is unto itself. If you look at like other industries, you kind of know how much it takes to make a movie or buy an album and rights and royalties and stuff. Anything kind of seems to be it's just the Wild West out here with some of these acquisitions.
It's someone like spinning the wheel of fortune and then just whatever number it lands on. It's like, okay, go on then. Yeah,
it really is.
I wonder if the Tencent willing to pay above the share prices to kind of get the game ons around the table, where if the game was, I assume that they're really passionate about games, they're passionate about Ubisoft, they want to put this in, if they want to get out of this, they'll want to hand this over to whoever they believe is the best people to take this forward. That's my assumption there. Tencent are quite controversial because of their links to the Chinese government, which is quite controversial in itself. So they might just be one of them. At share price, they're not willing to talk, because if there's other preferred investors sniffing around, maybe it's like, you know what, we're not going to talk to you, we're going to talk to these guys instead. But if their bid is better, it might turn their heads a bit.
That's a great
that
point.
might be their thinking.
I assume they could just buy off the publicly held shares as well.
If the public are willing to sell, if people who hold them are willing to sell.
Yeah, but if you're going above market price, then
you're going to sell to the highest one, aren't you? Yeah. There's a lot to be said there, Richie.
That might be it as well. They might be going, you know what, sell us your 15%, or these guys will.
Yeah.
Again, we'll just force you out.
Yeah. Well, we did a whole CloudQuest episode about Google potentially looking to buy Ubisoft as a great move for both Google and Stadia. And you look at this in the share prices and you think, well, if Tencent come in and then go, okay, we're looking to buy, that sounds like a sweet deal. It might actually wake up the other companies who think, you know what, if Tencent are buying out more shares than them, maybe we should make a bid for them and think about their own tactics and stuff. But again, it's all kind of just up in the air. We don't know if this stuff will actually go through. There might be some legal proceedings around it. Who knows? Like, at what point, because again, it's not really governed, but at what point is Tencent allowed to have shares in just every single business on the planet when it comes to video games? Or is there some kind of governance to step in and say, you know what, you're a bit shady, you've got all your hands in all these pies, we don't know what goes on back home because we don't know what the Chinese government are up to with that. And yeah, it's all a bit kind of like
there is
Western
regulation around this sort of stuff, depending where the shares are like traded. Which I presume either with Ubisoft, it's probably either Canada, US, or France.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it depends. It's the same thing you saw of TikTok. Kind of is happening now. Like, there's so many kind of what ifs when it comes to dealing with the Chinese government that you can kind of apply Western kind of ideas and kind of it should go like this because it's done in the past.
Yeah, we just put our own approach on it from our biased kind of slanted view on it. But money talks, as we know, and I'm sure it'll go to the highest bidder. I do need to ask, Richie, is the sun right outside your window? Like literally knocking on? I noticed there was like a halo effect about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's like I was looking a bit hazy.
It was, there we go. It was funny when it came across. I was like, oh, we're just going to pan over to our Lord and Saviour, Richie, who's here with a halo around his head to tell us the news about Ubisoft.
Bow down to me, you peasants.
Well, why did you immediately go to a wrathful god rather than just like a nice one?
If you're going to be a god, you're going to have some fun with it.
I gave him power for all of 5 seconds, and his immediate thing was bow down.
To be fair, humanity, we're pretty shit.
Well.
Look what we've done to the planet. So
yeah, but we made this amazing podcast, so we're not too bad.
We do, yeah. Good podcasts, bad at the environment.
Bad at the environment. Next up, following on from all that news and acquisitions talk, there's another kind of little follow-up story on the back of this centered around Square Enix. I mentioned it just then, but they sold off recently to the Embracer Group some of their content, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, and a couple of their studios. Phase 2 of this plan, according to what does it say? Gibson. It just says Gibson. They always refer to people by just their surname. David Gibson. There it is. David Gibson, Japanese-based analyst, took to Twitter to mention that the phase 2 of this kind of changes happening over at Square Enix have kind of started to roll out, and they're looking to diversify their studio capital structure. Rising development costs of making games mean with 100% owned studios, they need to be selective and concentrate resources, which limits expansion. Hence the kind of sale of some of their Western studios. So he added some studios remain 100% while others will change. Equity method or joint venture, so that kind of looks at what they did with Embracer Group and possibly some of the deals with Final Fantasy being exclusive on PlayStation. We won't read too much into that, but the biggest impact look like it's going to hit large titles, meaning Square Enix will be able to allocate resources mainly to Japanese titles. So it looks like they're selling stakes in studios rather than just to improve their capital efficiency. Kind of back to what we were talking about a little bit there with Ubisoft, but this one's focused on more about streamlining their business in a weird way, because Square Enix they're not short on change. They make a lot of money every single year, and yet they've kind of got it in their heads that they need to trim the fat a little bit, and I don't really know what's going on over there.
Yeah, neither do they. When you look at those comments, diversify our capital structure and streamline our business, like, which is it? Either you want to diversify or you want to streamline. Like, these are antonyms. Like, we're going to diversify our structure by getting rid of everything, all of our Western studios, and focus on a very narrow band of games. I'm not against them doing that. I think Square, do what you do well. Like,
I think it might kind of, it smells like kind of preparing to look nicer to be sold or to attract buyers. Like,
I think they're jettisoning the stuff that they don't think is going to be profitable. They've probably looked at the margins, and if their Japanese games do significantly higher, it's like, why are we throwing the same sort of investment money into these Western studios when we could sell them off, use that money to reinvest in probably replace them with a new Japanese studio and diversify our list of JRPGs. And I think JRPGs are growing in the West as well. So that might be part of it. It's like, well, the games we traditionally associate with making are getting more popular in the market that we've been trying to crack using these more Western-style games. So we sell the Western-style games and we'll focus on what we do well. It's just the diversify our studio by, like, focusing on the narrow band of titles. It's like...
It's just very odd, isn't it? Like you said, the wording of it's weird. Getting rid of, like, again, we talked about price in the last conversation, but Tomb Raider for 300 million, like, alone, that IP is worth way more than that. I know we discussed on last week's show, Richie. the movie rights were recently up for auction because they didn't put a sequel out to the Alicia Vikander movie quick enough, and it's just like, even between, as much as we laugh at the movie, I think it made like 200-300 million. That poorly reviewed movie alone made just as much money as the purchase of the entire IP for video games, which is like, it just, something doesn't quite smell right around all these shapes and moves that are going on. Like, again, I know the valuations are crazy, but you've got overvaluations, undervaluations, and businesses saying they want to do one thing but they're doing the other. EA making single player games again. What's going on? It's a crazy world. But
well, for example, the 2018 Tomb Raider film made 274 million in the box office on the budget of around about 100 million. So they're selling the entire franchise and the entire development studio for half.
Yeah.
For like, well, just double what one film that I don't think was incredibly well.
No, it wasn't.
I mean, it seems like a good film, but it didn't like. It's not like in a Marvel style. It didn't like make that many waves.
Yeah. And for me though, it's still, again, it's the talent, the sheer talent. Like Crystal Dynamics and Adios Montreal, like they just finished putting out the Guardians of the Galaxy game, which got loads of Game of the Year. It was one of my favorite games of last year. It's like the sheer talent in the video games world is hard to acquire. And we've seen studios across the planet scramble to get quality game designers and architects and everything involved. And they're just like, yeah, you can have them for practically pennies in the grander scheme of things to the Embracer Group, which might not even be the best place for them, the best home. But we digress. We'll see more from Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, and Legacy of Kain, no doubt, from Embracer Group in the near future, while Crystal Dynamics kind of hash out what's going on over there. A little fun story that did actually come out off in and amongst all the Tomb Raider news we just discussed. Did you guys see the script for the new Tomb Raider reboot game that's now at the Embracer Group? It leaked last week. They were doing auditions for voice actors, and Colin Moriarty of the Sacred Symbols PlayStation podcast got his hands on it. And on this week's last episode, they actually did like a reading of the script. So they all played a character. They did terrible British accents, being Americans, of course, with the proper emphasised Cockney. Like Lara was an emphasised Cockney Brit, and it was a bloke doing it as well, so even funnier. And they read it out, and they've been like DMC struck by Crystal saying like, you can't talk about this, it's all private and secret. But
which is basically saying, yes, this is 100% genuine.
Yeah, they're basically validating the leaked report in practice. But obviously the game's quite far off, but what we've garnered from the script player, they kind of do like the set the scene at the beginning of a script, and it basically says Lara's at the end of her career, so she's no longer a young up-and-coming Tomb Raider dealing with like the trials and tribulations of her family and the traumatic death of her father, all that kind of stuff. She's a seasoned veteran, and what she's actually doing is getting together a team of young Tomb Raiders as she deals with the isolation of success. It's kind of like a different take on the Lara that we've pretty much seen throughout her entire history. The actual reading that they did, the script sounded terrible, if I'm honest. Like, I don't know whether it was the reading with the terrible accents that emphasised this, probably why they've been DMCA'd. But yeah, it was characters I've never heard of. It was very like almost like soap TV acting, where it was like everyone jumps down the hall, they're falling, and then Lara pulls the parachute, and one turns to the other and goes, "Well, you had a parachute all along?" Lara replies, "I knew you wouldn't know I had the parachute." It's like so. Like, I know it's video game script, and it probably wouldn't. It would look a lot better in the final edit, and when you're playing it in real life, but. You know,
once they've done a few takes and they've refined it a bit on set, that sort of stuff might work. But it's probably a bit raw.
I mean, let's face it, this leaked script is never going to be included in the game now. They'll specifically take it out just so this never sees the light of day. Yeah. Where do you guys fit around a team-based game? So I immediately see when I read that kind of introduction of this is going to be possibly online multiplayer to some degree, or you're going to play as like introducing a new team of Tomb Raiders. I'm like, in my mind, I just want to play as Lara. I don't give a shit about extra B and extra C. I just want to play the campaign as Lara. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah,
I'm with you, but it could go like the route of The Last of Us, where you have partner characters who are actually programmed well, so they add to the game experience rather than take away. But if you focus on being Lara. It could be a way if they're planning to, you know what, we're going to continue the franchise, but after this game, we're going to retire Lara. by having a team of characters, we can then decide which one was best well received to push forward as the new new mascot for the franchise. I
don't think you can do Tomb Raider without Lara Croft.
Nah, I don't.
I don't know.
So then they're going to have to reboot after they finish this game. If this sounds like it's going to be this Lara, the Lara we've known of the last 3 games, as her last outing.
I honestly think the safer bet is to just continue with the Lara they rebooted. Like, the character's fantastic, and having finished all 3 games, they haven't give her a complete story, I wouldn't say yet. Like, to round out, there's still many more stories to be told, because she's still a young girl out there adventuring, and yet, I think because it's under new leadership now, and it's owned by a new company, they've got a few years in development, I think they kind of want to do their own thing with it, but part of me is but it was a tried and tested method. Like, the proof is in the revenue. Like, the games were all well received, and they all made money. Like, don't change it too much, or you risk just pissing all of your, 20, 30 years of fans off.
It could be a contractual situation. Maybe the actress who plays Lara said, this is my last one. If this is the end of her contract, it's and she's told them, I'm not going to do any more. I want to go do different stuff. Maybe then because there was talks of they're using the next game to bridge the reboot series and the original series. Yeah, they were going to bring kind of elements of the older PS1 through PS3 games in. Is it Angel of Darkness is one of them, and the other ones, but. Again, we'll have to wait and see. All of the conversation on this week's show evidently is many, many years off. Yeah, these games will all be in pre-concept art auditions stages, so a little while to go. There are a few things coming up on the horizon, though, in terms of PlayStation news. We have Spider-Man comes out. Of course, it's Insomniac 2018 phenomenal title we discussed earlier on when we were breaking down the Iron Man game, set for release on the 12th of August, so next week, on PC. And it has Steam verification, been Steam Deck verified by the company over there. The reason I wanted to bring it up and include it with the PC release, obviously millions more people are going to have access to this now who didn't have a PS4 or PS5, with all these fancy new bells and whistles that does come with a PC iteration. No doubt mods. That's always a fun part of PC games.
The mod community,
completely. We're going to see Venom outfits onto this alongside again, you've got probably the best rendition of New York City at your disposal now to just drop anything into. So they're going to go crazy with it.
Bully Maguire.
Oh yeah, yes. Give us it. You're definitely going to see comic book counterparts, the villains added in, all that kind of jazz. What kind of caught me out with this story is with it being Insomniac tweeted out saying Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered is Steam Deck verified. And Richie, actually made me think a little bit about our CloudQuest episode we recorded that goes live. That's actually live now, I should say. That episode 78, I want to say, about the backbone and PlayStation kind of leaning into mobile gaming eventually, finally, or properly with the introduction of cloud gaming. They're also leaning into the Steam Deck here, so it's it's PlayStation is so weird at the moment because they're promoting stuff on PC, which they've never done before until the last few years. They're now gladly tweeting out stuff about, we're available on a different portable handheld device. And part of me just screams Vita or PSP. What are you doing? You could just put out another thing to rival the Switch. And yet they're quite happy just shipping their wares out to everyone else now, it seems. They're clearly not interested in bringing out a new Vita. So... which is a bit surprising because the Vita was actually sold quite well. Maybe not so in the West, but over in Japan, it sold incredibly well. But they're clearly not interested in it. So, I think if a game goes on Steam now, you don't really have much choice. It will go on the Steam Deck. Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of me just dreams that if they could just sort out the cloud gaming, give me a Vita that's pretty much hollow inside, except for it's got phenomenal network capabilities, like 5G, the best Wi-Fi antennas, and let me stream all of these titles on this device. I don't need to buy a Sony Pro Duo memory card for £800 to play the games on the device natively. But just we've seen it, Rob, you've seen it with Xbox Cloud Gaming you're doing, Richie, we're 150 episodes deep on a Google Stadia podcast. PlayStation have the legacy. They just need the kind of tools, and as much as the backbone with an iPhone, I'm sure does a terrific job. It's not quite the same as getting a Sony branded PlayStation product in your hand. Yeah, and the screen on the phone is not quite big enough, even with a large screen, in my opinion. And they tend to not
they tend to be weird resolutions in a phone. They're not that 16 by 9 usually.
Yeah, they're a bit all over the place. But
I almost think the PlayStation 4 success kind of, whilst it was great for them at the time, it's made them kind of sleep on the cloud elements of where the industry was heading for a bit too long, maybe.
It's a shame.
I think it's on the right path again with cloud gaming. At one point, I thought the nails were in the coffin for PS Now. And now look at it now. They are bringing it back. They've added a PlayStation Plus. They're bringing out things like a branded backbone, which suggests that cloud gaming is coming to phones. All these versions of PlayStation games are coming.
Yeah,
they're playing catch up, but they are playing it. So
yeah, it's so crazy to look at. I think Nintendo's kind of financial forecast was released this week, and they were still predicting, even though it was less than last year, they're forecasting to still sell 21 million Nintendo Switches. And I just can't believe that in a world where 21 million handheld devices that, let's face it, the graphic fidelity on those consoles, it's nowhere near what we're expecting. And we know, Richie, and Rob, you know as well, the cloud gaming can alleviate that kind of fidelity that you lose in a handheld device through the power of the internet. And I just think, like, how can they sit there, their marketing team and their research and development team, and not go, like, we've got a phenomenal controller in the DualSense. PS5's doing gangbuster numbers when you can actually get your hands on one. We've got one of the best portfolios of video games right now in the world. If you put out a handheld device that allows you to play the new God of War Ragnarok, the new Wolverine game, Spider-Man 2, the next Last of Us title, the new Uncharted game, all of the other games in between from third parties, in the palm of your hand, and that's not a good idea. It's weird.
My only thought is they want to distribute more PS5s before they kind of... Because they still do need to do a lot of work to get the dev costs for that.
But I mean, then that's the other side of that is, they're fully committed, it seems, to VR. Like, PSVR 2 is going to be, another £400 odd piece of peripheral kit that you need to buy on top of your PS5 console? Yes, we drop a grand, but...
It's on top of the PS5 console. It's not instead of the PS5 console.
Yeah. But in terms of, like, research and development and making unique games for VR... when I feel like the easiest choice, I mean, again, not a developer or anything, but I just feel like as a consumer, the easiest choice for me would be like, you tell me there's a Vita 2 coming out and I can play all these on the move. I'm buying that day one as a PlayStation fan. And yet VR 2, I'm like, I like the idea of it, but we'll see how it's reviewed. We'll see how I'm not in day one, which is a tech company. You kind of want me to be there day one as a founder.
What I think they need to do is just something similar to a Switch Lite. It doesn't need the console, the handheld itself doesn't need to be that powerful, but instead of like the equivalent of Joy-Cons, you have DualSense control, effectively snap your DualSense in half, stick on either side of your screen. Yeah, SenseCons, we'll call them that.
Coined, copyright.
So you get a genuine, like, it feels like you're playing on a PS5, but in a Switch-like form factor. It doesn't need to be overly powerful if you go on, it's powered through the cloud. You can have some downloadable stuff, but it's playing at lower resolutions and stuff. So maybe you can play the PS4 games natively, but PS5 through the cloud, but that would require improving the cloud. But you do that, and I think you've got a winner.
Yeah. I mean, Richie, you still use remote play quite frequently in your house.
Yeah, I remote play because my PS4 is on my desk in my office. My PS5 is downstairs. If I want to be doing... Like, when I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima... Because I've played it before, I know all the main story beats. I'll have things like, I'll have a podcast on, I'll have some music on, I'll have stuff on as well. So I actually like to play here, because I've got more screens.
So you just stream it upstairs? So I just remote upstairs,
Yeah. And during the heat wave, my PS5 was downstairs kicking out heat, my PS4s are playing nice and cool.
Nice and cool. Plenty to do, plenty to see. I'd hate to think that they've abandoned it forever, but maybe we need to see what VR2 does before they reassess. When they look at their competition and go, Xbox are doing cloud gaming quite well. Nintendo have sold 100 million Nintendo Switches by that point. You got to kind of look at the market and think, we can't just let Nintendo run away with the handheld world, surely. But as with this kind of most news...
The Steam Deck exists now.
Yeah, but we don't know what numbers that's selling yet. They haven't even finished all their initial orders, so we'll wait to see on that one. But either way, you can play Spider-Man on your Steam Deck as of the 12th of August. A few things to wrap out this week's show as well, gentlemen. A couple of new games in the works. Meet Your Maker is the next game from the Dead by Daylight development team, Behaviour Interactive. They got a trailer this week that dropped, basically showcasing some of the sci-fi insight into this new first-person game. It is split into two forms. There is a first-person building and raiding element to it in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So it does have a slight undertone similar to Dead by Daylight, and the gameplay is split into two halves, with players building their own outposts and others to raid the outposts. There's lots of posts in there. Both can be done in co-op with friends. So you start off, you build your outpost, it looks like, and then you go into kind of the gameplay element where you try and defeat each other's outposts. So it reminds me a little bit, Richie, of Orcs Must Die, with some kind of first-person shooter tied into it. But it's different. It looks cool, but it's odd.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird asymmetric game by the looks of it, where it's almost like a childhood fantasy where two teams will build their own base and then you have to go raid the other team. I could see because you have the players building the level, effectively building the levels for you, it adds that completely endless supply of creativity as long as people can mess on with stuff.
Yeah,
add new traps, new secret doorways and all sorts of stuff. I think this could be awesome.
Yeah, they're trying something different. Initially, it reminds me of me and my brother used to play Red Faction on the kind of just the co-op part. There was one mission one level, you start in a canyon, and you basically both start in like this stone canyon either side with a couple of like window turrets and rocket launchers, and then you just go at each other across this small narrow playing field. And the way you destroyed the environment, it created stairs and ways to get up or different windows to jump out of, and all it was just two people on each side of a map would start off, and you try and get to this side and see who got the most kills by the end of it. And it reminds me of that. However, it's got that creative twist like Fortnite where you build your own base and then you go at each other. Very different, very odd. What are your feelings on this one, Rob?
This is going to sound weird coming from such a Fallout nut, but I'm getting a bit tired of the post-apocalyptic kind of aesthetic now, because I've been playing like a lot of Fallout. I've been, obviously, like The Last of Us is kind of getting my attention and things like that. So I like the mechanics, but I might just be a bit too played out on the post-apoc for me to jump into it. But we'll see what comes out when it kind of...
We shall.
Develops, I guess.
I guess it's one of those things, back to what we were saying earlier in the show, like you've got to try new things for it to really land, and I think it's definitely a different approach. It's definitely a twist.
It could be an interesting one where it's like based on a couple of rounds where maybe you have 60 seconds to build your fort before that you can start attacking each other, and based on the amount of kills and stuff, you get points to then develop your fort further for the next round. Stuff like that. It sounds like there's a lot. Basically, you could just take any crazy capture the flag would work awesome in a game like this.
Yeah, they've said there's a big focus on social elements as well based into the game, so I'm guessing that's going to be either a point system or the back and forth where different friends kind of attempt to kill each other and take down the bases. It does say in here you can share creations with friends to circumvent the game's resource economy. You can follow your favourite creators, send screenshots of failed attempts, award accolades for each run. Fun, brutal, ingenious, artistic and stuff. So there seems to be some kind of scoring system within the online factor of this. But what that looks like, I don't know. I guess they've got Twitch in mind quite heavily when it comes to this kind of taking off the back of that. But yeah, it's kind of got Minecraft, Fortnite building mechanics. Then there's a Doom, Quake, first person, go destroy your enemy element to it. And then there's kind of a social aspect as well built in where you're kind of reviewing, scoring and rating your best maps, I guess, or your best builds within the game. So it's an odd one.
The reason I got to capture the flag is because theoretically you could put the flag in your base wherever you want. Where the thing with capture the flag games in most like first person shooter multiplayer stuff is the flag gets placed where it gets placed, and then people learn where the flag is, and then the interest dies down quick.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly rebuilding the map every single time you play, it creates a constant stream of interesting challenges.
Yeah, very interesting. I definitely want to give it a go just to see what I can build. Like, I'd want to build like death traps in the main entrance, like lure people in through a fake entrance and drop like 20 tons of bricks on them or something.
Yeah, kind of some like Rust style play.
Yeah, like fake flags, like hologram flags, so they think they've got it and then it's actually a trap instead. Like all that. I can see that definitely playing into kind of the humour of Twitch and people watching along and getting caught up in it. Yeah. But still a little ways out. It's 2023 is the date for this one, but it is something a little bit different from the Dead by Daylight team over there. So we'll keep an eye on this one alongside further developments. Speaking of further developments, last story of the week is just a quick one from Koch Media. Richie, we did a live stream, the worst live stream we've ever done, watching along with one of their announcement things, and it was basically I won't say go back and watch it because it's terribly out of date, but it was just so painful. It lasted.
We just got drunk and hung out for chat instead.
It lasted like 2 hours, Rob, and essentially if I told you to just go into an office and sit on a chair in front of like a slightly poorly angled backdrop, not green screen, just like a backdrop screen, and talk.
I'd say off-center as well.
Off-center, and just talk to the camera about upcoming projects with no gameplay footage, no trailers, introduce a bunch of other random people you work with, and then just cut to them for about 2 hours. Then that's what this was, as a professional showcase. And
well, I know what I'm doing for the 2 hours after we're done filming this.
Straight away. But yes, Koch Media, they're trying to obviously get away from that, and they've announced this week that they are ditching the name, as it admits Koch, whatever you want to call it, media is hard to get its name around. So they've named it with something just as weirdly awkward and spelled. Plaion, or Plaion, as apparently it's pronounced, spelled Plaion, is going to now represent Koch Media. So this is the same development team who owns companies like Deep Silver, Warhorse, and it's got a little bit of a rebrand to, and reading from the press release, better portray who we are and the journey we are taking. Over the last 28 years, we've built an incredibly strong business, partnering with many of the best-known names in the industry. And since joining the Embracer Group in 2018, the growth has accelerated and we've become increasingly diversified. Sounds like Square Enix chatter here. Our new game offers us the opportunity to build on our rich history and publishing partners with our outstanding, constantly growing network of world-class development studios and creative people. And we wanted to help deliver that service, evidently, by not mutating into a different company. We're just following a path we've already been on since becoming part of Embracer. And with this, it's sometimes difficult for people to pronounce. So there you go. And the first game from the new company, Plaion Media, is Saints Row, which comes out August 23rd this month. So Plaion is the new name for Koch Media.
Yep, good move. If no one knows how to pronounce the name of your company, it's a bad brand.
What do you think of Plaion though? Plaion?
It sounds like something made by committee, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, this is very clever, guys. Let's go with this.
I think it's better than Koch Media, whatever it is, though, because you at least know how to say it.
Do you though? I wouldn't have said thought that said Plaion because of the I. The I just kind of splits into play ion for me.
Yeah, it looks very generic as well, the logo.
It does, I'll give you that.
That could be on any company, right?
But I think Koch Media just doesn't. If you told someone about Koch Media who didn't know the video game industry, had never heard of the Embracer Group, they wouldn't have a clue what that was.
Yeah, but at least Koch is like interesting in insofar it sounds a bit like Koch.
There you have it, guys. Rob's interested in Koch.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I suppose
Plaion can't.
Yeah, that's just Saints Row humour for you there.
You could burn your cock.
What's wrong with you today? The sun got to you behind your head or something. Either way, yeah, I think I'm with Rob in this camp where the logo as well, there's like a kind of little green play symbol and then the font and everything. If you told me this was kind of like a free streaming service that came included with my mobile phone plan from like in a foreign country's network, I'd totally believe you that this is definitely the...
You know what? Now you've mentioned that, I'm with you. I think it was the right move to rebrand.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they've done a good job of rebranding.
Yeah, it's almost...
It's like the top Eastern European streaming service.
Yeah, like access to hundreds of films that you can't understand because of the language barrier or that you've never even heard of before. Includes Bollywood channels and Japanese news. It's everything.
It's that app you just have on your smart TV that you never even click on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. But Saints Row, again, out imminently in the near future. We'll obviously see this logo in all its entirety and whatever kind of little interesting virtual ident they put all over it. But that does bring us, gentlemen, to the end of this week's episode of Talking the PS. Right here, we round up all of the PlayStation and gaming news for your listening or viewing pleasure. And it's also available on podcast services up there in the digital cloud. So if you do want to listen on Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Deezer, all those Deezer geezers out there, do give us a rating, give us a 5-star review. We do appreciate it. And if you are watching on YouTube, drop us a comment, drop us a like, share, click that bell so you're kept in the loop with all of the great content we do, like our live streams, Let's Plays, and all of the other wonderful shows. If you are into cloud gaming and such, check out our Sounds of Stadia podcast, where every Monday me and Richie get together and round out all the Stadia gaming news. We've just passed episode 150, so we're celebrating 150 weeks of consistently bringing you that Google Stadia goodness. And we also have an episode of CloudQuest that goes live every Friday on free feeds. But if you are a Helix Hero, like 50 of the wonderful folks out there who support us that little bit extra, that little bit further, you get up to 6 days early. Just like this very show sometimes. If we record on a Friday, if we're feeling nice, we sometimes put it up on the Saturday, so 3 days early, in fact. But that's been all the PlayStation news for this week's show. My name's been Chris.
I've been Richie.
And I've been Rob.
We've been Helix Cloud Games, talking the PS and the Koch, if Richie will have his way this weekend. Enjoy what you're doing, folks, and remember, play whatever makes you the happiest. See you on the next one. Good luck. Goodbye.